Well, thank you for welcoming me today, and I'll do what I can. So, where do I begin? There we go. So here's Gill. That's in her normal life. Always full of fun. Obviously, they had some alcohol in there. It was the summer of 2021, and I thought COVID was behind us. You know, we were now allowed to meet in large groups. We had just been away with friends, and we're now looking forward to a week, just the two of us. Oh dear, yes. In our caravan, that was the plan, to go to the Isle of Wight. As a child, Gill would tell you that she loved the Isle of Wight. It never rained, the sandy beaches were wonderful, and as a teenager, she'd go dancing. I became part of Gill's life 30 years ago. She had 6 children, I had 2, and between us we had 15 grandchildren and 1 great-granddaughter. Life was always busy with our large family, as you can imagine, but we also had big separate interests in our community, but we needed some real time on our own. Just time together. So with our golden retriever, we stopped off on the way to have dinner with one of our families because it was our granddaughter's birthday, and then to Lymington and the ferry to Yarmouth. Unlike Gill's childhood, the weeks were wet, not until... And so we spent some afternoons and evenings in our caravan watching TV and DVDs. One evening we watched To Olivia. I don't know how many of you watched that film. It's the film about Roald Dahl's early life and his challenges in writing Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. But as some of you may know, his oldest daughter catches measles, develops encephalitis and dies. Whilst we thought how tragic, we thought no more about encephalitis. You know, for the only charities Gill and I were supporting were cancer-related charities. Gill had been the chair of our local Macmillan fundraising committee, and she enthused about this. One year she raised over £10,000 in a few weeks, getting all the shops to display support for Macmillan, holding a sponsored walk, and other fundraising activities. She called it Painting the Town Green. That's an idea, Painting the Town Red. An idea for us. So we arrived on the Saturday, and for the next few days we toured the island, mainly in the rain, as I said, and on Wednesday she said she couldn't shift a headache that she'd had for a few days, and she thought she had COVID again. Late that evening, Gill's temperature had risen to 39 centigrade, and she was restless. I suggested we call a doctor, but if ever you knew Gill, there would be a total refusal. But I woke in the morning early and she was still very hot and was somewhat delirious. So I called 999, the emergency services. I had to arrange for the campsite warden to let the paramedics onto the site. And talking to Gill, they knew she wasn't well. They asked her who I was, and she said I was her husband, but she said my name was Ollie, the name of her youngest son. They said they would take her to hospital and I would hear from them in due course. Later that day, I did get a call to say they were looking to bring her temperature down. I think they thought it was a urinary infection, but they would keep in touch. But because of COVID restrictions still in hospitals, I couldn't visit. So I just waited. That was the dog and me. We just waited. I think I called 1 or 2 of the children, didn't I? And told them that Mum was in hospital, but I didn't know what was wrong with her. When things happen, I think, you know, this type of thing happens, we really do need to keep a diary, because looking back, we don't know, do we? We can never remember, it's all a bit hazy. So, I guess hazy was a bit of an understatement over the next few days. I remember being called to the hospital, I think it might have been the Saturday, I can't remember, to settle her down because they were struggling to keep her under control. I told her it was our wedding anniversary the following week, but that surprised her, and she wasn't sure that I was her husband. But so be it. So then I was sent back, but later I got a call to give approval for a lumbar puncture, She's very sick, they said. Eventually, I'm called by the visiting neurologist from Southampton to let me know that she's been moved into ICU and she has encephalitis. What was that, I asked. I'm told she has herpes simplex viral encephalitis and that her temporal lobes have been severely damaged. I can't visit. The nurses keep me informed on how she is, and I can see her on the iPad, lying there unconscious. Several of the children can also see her. How long will she be in hospital? How long can I stay on the caravan site? Because it's the summer, someone else is going to want my pitch. So all I can do is to pack up the caravan, leave her in the Isle of Wight and travel back 160 miles to Cambridgeshire. I guess I was a bit of a loss. But by this time, a cyclovir and anti-seizure medication had been administered to improve her situation. The neurologist gave her a 60-40 chance of recovery. But we had a new challenge. How were we going to get her back to Cambridgeshire? My GP suggested Addenbrooke's, but they declined. But Peterborough said they would take her. So after much discussion, but there was a stumbling block. Which NHS trust pays for the travel? I never found out, but she was blue lighted in an ambulance on a ventilator with a doctor and nurse across the Solent on the ferry and some 160 miles to Peterborough. In Peterborough ICU, they were happy for me to visit her. There she is. Every day I was allowed to visit her for an hour. I found out later that they kept a diary of her time and how they were looking after her. This, they hoped, would help her understand what had happened during the time she was in ICU. And I think, I've talked to Brian about this, I think this is something that all hospitals should have on their list, because it is a journey and you want to know, don't you, about what has happened to you, because your family don't remember everything. So after about a week in ICU in Peterborough, I get a call from the doctor. I'm giving you a call to tell you we're moving her to our sister hospital some 20 miles away in Huntingdon. Why, I asked? She's the fittest person in the ward. She's still unconscious, but she's the fittest person. So they moved her to Huntingdon, where she was. By this time, she had a tracheotomy. But again, I was really fortunate. I was allowed to visit each day. And after some time, she was moved to a general ward. But first, I was asked to meet with the lead doctor and was allowed to bring Tamara, who's with us today. He told us that the damage to the brain was so severe that he didn't know if she would be able to swallow. You know that, didn't you? Swallow, eat, or even walk again. We needed to understand the severity of the situation. She was in the general ward for about 6 or 7 weeks, where she made great progress. She did eventually manage to walk unaided, a few times falling over when the nurses weren't looking. She was so determined. I remember the doctor actually calling me at home to say that he just witnessed her walking. I think she got around to eating and swallowing because I used to bring in smoked salmon, brie and condensed milk, which she loved. She didn't like the hospital food. She even threw the jacket potato at me. And here she is. So during all this time, COVID restrictions remained with the hospital. And I was the only one able to visit her. None of her 6 children could see her. Though later on, we did manage to see her. We saw her in the garden. I managed to get her into a wheelchair, take her down, and Tamara and Maddie saw her, didn't you? So, after about 13 weeks in hospital, Gill was given a place at a brain injury rehab unit in Ely. This was to be for 12 weeks, so we would get her home for Christmas. But again, there were COVID restrictions here. Only 2 visitors twice a week, meeting in the car park or in an empty room, totally undecorated. And I know the girls get very upset about this. This, for me, though, was more restrictive than in hospital. There I could see her every day, but now I could only see her twice a week. And we had to sort of take time into who was going to come and visit, because one daughter was in Bristol, others were sort of in London. But we managed at least everyone to see her. But after 4 weeks, so here we are. Here they are. Oh, here is she eating her food, not throwing that at me. And here we were in the rehab unit, much better, able to walk, talking a bit confused. Here's with Tamara and Ollie, and there she was with Pip. And yeah, I think she would have said to me, Godfrey, you need to do something about my hair. But after 4 weeks of making what we thought was amazing progress, and everyone has said what this journey of how she'd come along so well and was fully recovering, I got a call to say that she was experiencing a slight seizure and was going to be taken to Addenbrooke's in Cambridge. They said she should be home later that evening, but perhaps I wanted to join her. I remember clearly that day, the hospital A&E was very crowded. People were trying to get in and were being stopped. Gill's carer had been refused entry, so she was alone in hospital. Eventually, with the help of Gill's youngest son, who was in the previous picture, who we know is not known for taking no, is he, for an answer? He's very forceful. I was allowed in. I drove back home to March, an hour's drive, and then Ollie said, oh, you can get in. So I drove back another hour, and I just got in time to see her slip into unconsciousness. She was kept on a ventilator for 5 weeks. Again, here we are, you see. Trying different anti-seizure medication, which, bringing her out of unconsciousness and finding that the seizure in the arm was coming again and they couldn't stop it. They said they tried all medication. They tried a treatment thinking maybe it was autoimmune this time. So we had all of that. Again, all of that treatment, and they fitted a vagal nerve stimulator to try and control. But none of that worked. And so during the 5 weeks, though, I was allowed to visit her every day, apart from one afternoon when Tamara was able to come with me and we met with the doctor. But at the end of 5 weeks, we were asked to have a family meeting. We met with the consultants and the nurses who were caring for her, and we were told they could do no more. They would remove the ventilator and the supporting drugs, and it was only a matter of time. I said, how long? They said, shortly. So 2 years on, it is still painful at times. When these times happen, it is as if my life is on hold. You wonder, what do you do? The home we built together remains the same. At what point do I make changes? Or will I make changes? But I've had many friends, and Gill's children, despite their grief, have been so supportive. We all know that Gill would be the last person to want support for the rest of her life. The brain surgeon who consulted me a number of weeks before we got to that point of the end of life had said to me that he could stop the seizures, but that would mean that she would not be the person we knew. I said I couldn't contemplate that idea. She was too independent. She'd brought up 6 children virtually on her own. She had made a significant contribution to our local community. She was loving, she was fun, and challenging at times, as we all knew. And Samantha, who was a great friend of hers, and used to do flower arranging together, would know that. She'd tell you how to do it. So here is Gill on her 70th birthday with all her family. And that's what we continue to remember. So over the past 2 years, the Society has been here for me if and when I've needed it. As a family, we joined in the Brain Walk in 2022. And we raised a little bit of money. But my takeaway today is that the world needs to have greater awareness of this illness and strive for early diagnosis by the medical profession in order that there will be better outcomes. Thank you. I'm good.